Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. Hope everyone's doing okay. Thank you very much for tuning in. As always, massively appreciate it. Shout out to all the subscribers. Gratitude to anybody new. Thank you to all. So let's talk about this fight. Sebastian Fundora retains his WBC belt, I think it is, right? Well, whatever belt it is, congrats to him. He put on a great performance, defeating Tim Tszyu, who retired and quit in between the 7th and 8th round, but before the 8th round came out, in a very tough fight. You know, that really was, gladiator warfare, really, which is the video that I made a few days before the fight. Thanks to anybody that watched that. A couple of pointers in there. I was saying, like, whoever's going to be able to back up the other guy is going to be a big key to the victory. And Fundora came out and took the center of the ring and was, being a bit more assertive with that jab, and that jab was a key factor in the first fight as well, because Tim Tszyu was able to counter it and push Fundora back and land clean, hard shots, which put him in his box, which made him go back. And when Tim Tszyu's pushing the fighter back, he's in control and he's the dominant fighter. But when he's getting pushed back, his footwork goes a little bit off. We're going to talk about all this stuff as well, because you really, the fundamentals that he didn't have really, to fall back on, played a part. Although it's hard to say that for sure because of Fundora's style and size and awkwardness. I don't know if anybody that had fundamentals will be able to deal with that, to be honest, because it's so such a nightmare. But credit to Fundora, he looked like a better fighter. Not better on the night, just massively improved, more confident, and as I said, he came a bit more assertive with that jab and just a bit more sting on it. It was still what I thought counterable, if that's the right English, but because if you're watching me snapping it and he doesn't quite pull it back to his jaw, maybe because it's just so long, but it had a bit more meanness to it, and then he landed that straight shot down the pipe
until it was mercifully stopped. That was October 2024, and there is the dark memory for Tim Tszyu,
which I spoke about. It wasn't at the time where Tim Tszyu was leaning back, but Tszyu was leaning back quite a bit. And he's getting caught with those shots, those backhands, and he threw off a hook at the same time. And his hooks sometimes can be technically flawed. He threw the same hook against background. It's like a straight arm hook, right, with the palm facing out, which doesn't really do as much damage. And he got caught with the left hand. They didn't really see it. Got hurt from that. It was a flashish knockdown, but he looked a little bit dazed from it, And the second round, well, it was all downhill from there, really. After the second round, I was thinking to myself, I don't see his way back in this, just from how dominant Fundora was being and what Tim Tszyu was lacking on his back foot. And he looked a bit wild. Tszyu looked a bit wild with some of the shots he was getting off. Fundora's presence and confidence and size all seemed to be playing a big part for me. And obviously, after getting knocked down and after going through what he's gone through and having to, psychologically deal with this giant man that he just, obviously went 12 round bloody war with and lost. But it wasn't just that, it was what, a piece of him would have been left in the ring that night, for sure. A piece of him got left in the ring against background, for sure. And I think he said after, fill me in the gaps if I'm wrong here, because as I did say, I've been away, I watched the fight today, but I haven't seen all the interviews and stuff like that. I thought I saw the headline there, but that's very concerning, if he said he wasn't half the man he was. If I'm wrong on that, apologies, but I think he said something like that. But he tried his hardest, obviously, up until the point where he did retire, but he must have thought, like, all the stuff that's happened to him before that played a huge part. And it's a story. I'll get onto the rest of the fight actually, because it really looked like he was very uncomfortable in there, especially in the second round. The look on his face, obviously his team need a massive amount of criticism, because it just seems like a lot of naivety has been happening, the development of certain parts of his game. Lack of clinching. Now this was a massive one.
He wants to get us up against the top, hold up, he's getting pummeled. That right hook hurt Tim Tszyu, and here comes
on the ropes. And this is what happens when you have a fighter that's so used to bullying people and pushing people back and never actually learned clinching because they've never been in that position to actually be on the ropes. And you know, he just again decided to fight back against a much bigger guy in a situation where your exchanges really go down from 50-50 to probably like 30-70 really, if you're talking about exchanging with Fundora, especially when you're a little bit more weaker and he's a stronger fighter at the time, because he took loads of shots in that second round, getting backed up into the corner, didn't know how to clinch, couldn't really use, I don't think I've ever seen Tim Tszyu pivot, to be honest with you. He was doing some lateral side steps here and there, which were fine, but like really and truly, he lacked the fundamentals of a good jab and good footwork and keeping his hands up. You know, and he does like to parry a lot of shots. I mentioned that before, but it just wasn't working. He wasn't able to get his defense as good as it was. I wonder if that was just from his lack of confidence and just from being hurt a little bit and just being overwhelmed. And Fundora was actually countering him a little bit nicely too at times.
Waiting for the chest. Straight shots.
I'll do my best to pull up some footage, guys, but I've had a shorter window today, and I also trying to turn the channel into some videos that are really geared to more science and art. The post-fight stuff I'm not leaning to do as much or looking to do as much, but I do know that there's some people that have been watching my videos on Tim Tszyu, so I appreciate it. You know, I wanted to make this video for you guys. If you were waiting for a video for me to put up, I'm very grateful, so this one's for you, and thank you to all the videos you've watched. And I wanted to talk about it too because, as I said, I made a lot of videos about him and had you know, some high hopes right up until the Fundora first fight, you know, because I really saw such an unbelievable spirit, you know, and I really was like, wow, that's incredible. But you know, almost too much pride and too much heart and not enough education in the corner to develop him properly and just throw him in there. You know, fight after fight, hindsight's 20/20, we know that, but just, you know, from even the arrogance of taking the background fight the way he did, you know, the overlooking him a bit, and then even going back into Fundora, I didn't really think about it at the time, but I didn't expect Fundora to be as good as he was. But when you look at the decisions the team's making, not to mention the calamity with the cut, and there were people before me that were calling out his team, saying he needed a new team, and you know, I was a bit hesitant, although I might have mentioned it. Someone in the comments recently said that I was talking about that, but I was just trying to be respectful with the fact that they got him where they got him, and it's easy to just suddenly, a bad performance happens and let's get rid of the team. It's a bit unfair for me sometimes, but you know, it's really and truly, I couldn't tell what they were saying because they were speaking Russian, but they didn't really have an answer for anything. I mean, nobody does for Fundora unless you're Brian Mendoza. You got to walk him onto something, which by that point Tim Tszyu's power looked like it diminished. He's never been a one punch, you know, explosive power. I'm not saying he hasn't hurt and knocked guys out with one shot, or I don't know if he has actually. I know he's hurt a lot of guys, but I don't know if he's knocked somebody out with one shot. He's got some snap in there, don't get me wrong, but fighting an awkward fight like Fundora when you are a bit hurt, there's a lot of psychology going on there from the trauma that happened in both last fights. And you do wonder what has been taken from him. You know, his soul, the soul take has definitely had pieces of his soul eradicated from those two performances, and then another one here. So I don't know what the guy's going to do now, to be honest. I'm never one to call on people to retire, because at the end of the day, that's how he earns a living, and that's all he's done, so that's all he's known. I'm sure he'll be fine without it, but unless there's some major signs like leading up, maybe some speech slurs or stories about sparring or this and that, where you think, I don't know, because he didn't look as strong after getting knocked down. I know he's not had the greatest chin, but it was, you know, not a great sight to get beaten around like that, especially in like the second and third. I'm going a little bit off memory because I watched it earlier this morning and I watched some of the highlights, but he had a decent round in the 7th, and I think the 6th was okay as well. You know, he was trying, he was really reaching to try to get those overhand rights in. He landed a couple of nice left hooks, but those punches weren't really having much of an effect on Fundora in the 7th.
Oh, there's a right hand that sends the blood flicking up on the face of of Sebastian Fundora.
Tim Tszyu is a throwback fighter. They both are. Look at this action.
And then Fundora says, you're going to hit me in the head, I'm going to go downstairs, and how about this left uppercut?
I think he might have won the 6th. Maybe the 6th and then the 7th, but definitely the 7th. And then you know, he retired out of nowhere. And he must have just had enough and just gone through some trauma in his head. I'm not sure. I was very surprised. I was actually working at the time, and I was getting a little live feed, and I didn't see the first 3 rounds on the feed, so I didn't really know how the fight was going, because it was being fairly small wordage for each round to round, so I didn't really know. And then it was like Tim Tszyu retires in the 8th. I was like, what? That's crazy. So he must have some sort of, I questioned how his neurological would be, not psychological, which obviously I was curious about too, I think, but I was more concerned about the neurological, because the psychological, I thought he's so tough and brave and steel mentality that I thought he'd be fine with that. But it's the neurological, and he got dropped in the 2nd round, and look, that was a decent shot. He didn't see it coming either, but there hasn't been many adjustments along the way, let's be honest. And at the highest level, you're talking about conquering America, that 154 division. After that performance, you do wonder if he's really cut out for that division at that level. I mean, obviously there's been some talks about him maybe just going back to Australia and being I suppose he could still be a star out there and get the right fights. Matchmaking is going to be really important. I don't know, to be honest with you. I honestly don't know. I think his health is going to be really important, but the team, there were so many people calling for him to have a new team right after the Fundora fight, and they were right, really, if you think about it, because of the lack of development and because of the naive decisions to keep throwing him in there. And as cool as it is to have a team that want to back him and do everything they want to do, which his management team do, they are, he does call the shots, it seems, but you need somebody, and I know his uncle trains him, but you need someone to be like, no, especially in this game. And I actually go quite light on fighters that duck fighters, because A, it's not always them, right? B, it's just a business. You got to look. These fighters are a commodity. They're in to make as much money as they can, and prize fighting without taking as much risk and damage. And as much as I love fighters that go out and take on the best all the time, of course I do, but you've got to be careful. And it's like an unforgiving sport, Unforgiving. I forgot to say that at the beginning of the video. That's the name of this video, because you can be unlucky with one mistake in this game. Not even a mistake that your opponent can capitalize on. A mistake, the footwork mistake. I wonder if that was playing on his mind a little bit, why he couldn't really get his foot out there on the outside as much and get the distance to get those clean shots. He wasn't able to counter Fundora's jab like he did in the first fight. Fundora was countering him, and it's just a dominant performance from Sebastian Fundora, who's going to be an absolute nightmare for anybody. Brian Mendoza had the right idea. You really got to walk him onto a massive shot. Tim Tszyu looked like he was going to stop him actually in the first fight, but again, one bad decision like that, bad team matchmaking against underestimating someone, and then almost your career's in pieces, really. I'm not saying it can't be revived, but I wouldn't favour him against most of the 154-pound fighters now, just because of the pieces that have been taken from him, because of how gung-ho he is, These are just my thoughts. I'm just thinking out loud here a little bit, because got to give credit to Sebastian Fundora, who is massively improved, and since he's become a champion, you can really see that aura and that energy. And again, in the first fight that they had, those sharp, hard shots that Tim Tszyu landed on Fundora really helped him back Fundora up. And then Fundora came out with the intent, and then he got he dropped him, and that turned the fight. And he was, for the most part, in control. backing Tszyu up, and again, he didn't know how to clinch. I don't think he either knew how to clinch mentally or actually the actual skill of clinching, you know. And those two things at that level are a necessity. It's part of the game. Just let some massive guy tee off on you and trying to swing back. It just shows you how, you know, stupidity, courageous and stupidity will get you killed in this game. You know, you got to be smart, which is again the irony, because he was quite smart beforehand. But if I were him, I would get to his brother and say, we got to get you to box. Do not fight like that. Don't take on everybody. Don't fight like you've been fighting. Get your jab going, move your feet, get some footwork drills going, get your fundamentals down, and learn how to box, because you can always fall back on the heart because it's there. But when you overuse the heart too much, you know, you're gonna burn it out. And then you know, that's what happened. I think his heart got burnt out. And when you burn out the heart, you burn out the neurological. Is that what happened? I'm not saying it definitely is, but I'd love to hear from you guys. Let me know what you think. How do you guys feel about it? How do you feel about the team? How do you feel about his progression? Because when you have a style like that and you're backing these guys up, and all of a sudden you can't back them up and they're backing you up, and you haven't got anything to fall back on. You don't have, you know, footwork, a jab, clinching ability, slow the fight down a little bit. You know, it's not easy against Fundora, but it wasn't even you know, there wasn't a plan B or C or D. It was just fight, you know. Anyway, I appreciate you guys if you stayed up till now. Thank you very much. You know, like I said, I'm trying to not be on much of a schedule with these fights and do the post-fight stuff and bring a more scientific or theme to the videos, which do take a bit longer. So apologies if you didn't get as many video clips as I like to. It just takes so long, and I didn't have the time this week because I just, as I said, been out of town. I had other couple of videos I've been working on. So hopefully this is enough for you guys, and I hope you guys are all well. And let me know if I missed something. I always do. And I'm always curious to hear people's opinions, because some knowledgeable boxing fans that have come onto these Tim Tszyu videos I make, and I love to hear from it. Do you know what I mean? Anyway, that is it from me. Thank you very much again. Have a peaceful week. I'm out.